dwell too much on it, but when we acquired JBoss, this is probably one of the biggest acquisitions Red Hat made. And the big reason was we were not finding anybody that was in the SOA frame that was open source. Everybody claims to be open standards, but it's depending on which two-way agreement you have signed with which vendor and what interoperability agreements you have. So anything you code in IBM will not work in Oracle and vice versa, and there's a bunch of other smaller players that play in the market. So we went in and acquired it. The good thing was that JBoss's business model was pretty close to Red Hat's. It's the same formula of jboss.org and JBoss Enterprise. So it allowed us to actually integrate the people, the company, the technology very quickly, and also allowed us to scale very rapidly. I have colleagues here from EXO and others that will talk about the integration of JBoss, how it's extending beyond just middleware. But again, what we try to do is acquire and try to make sure that we can extend the application of the portfolio that we do with it. These two, the next ones, might be something that you might never have heard of. In fact, most people outside Red Hat don't even know they exist, which is kudos to our marketing department. But all I'm trying to tell you here is that that one on the top is everything something like a big expensive thing like Oracle Data Warehouse can do for you for spending about $10 million, and you can do this with Red Hat for less than probably $25,000. And the one on the bottom, there is a small carrier in the region called MTN, based out of South Africa. And what they have actually used is replacing what we call service delivery platforms. So the whole concept that you'll be able to use voice to text, video to speech, speech to video, all those kind of transformations, they're all done in IP-based networks. And the traditional platforms are the Alcatels, the Ciscos, the Lucents of the world that have locked in terms of their platforms, technologies, and the usage. And we're trying to open them up as far as we can, of course, extending from the same core. So both of these work in conjunction with JBoss, because one of the things with Red Hat is that we try to stay, we're very, very conservative. We get pulled in 100 directions every day. Why don't you sponsor this project? Why don't you acquire this company? Why don't you integrate this? Why are you not seriously in the desktop? I get those questions almost every day. A lot of other Red Hatters too. But what we sincerely try to do is anything that we acquire or anything that we integrate has to have two qualities. One, it should be something that we can commoditize, and we can commoditize rapidly, which means it should be available to the mass immediately upon us trying to get in and trying to make sure it is available to the use, which is the whole concept of taking something and exposing it to that community of 50,000, 100,000 projects. And and the second principle is that once we get it, we also want to make sure it is stable enough and that can be tested enough that has a future in the project. Not something that is a community of one or a community of two, but something that can be developed into a community on its own, because as you've heard a lot of the other speakers today, the whole open source survives because of the community and by the community and for the community. So it has to be something that is self-sustaining, not just by one company. So we don't want to become, what do we call it, the single vendor open source company. And so we try to stay sure that we can commoditize it and we can actually extend it across as far as horizontally as possible. The other two, probably the next three, are probably my favorites. I'll start with Condor. This is a project that came out of University of Wisconsin. It started in 2006, and what it allows is the simple concept of grid technology, allowing you to steal cycles from unused computing power, whether it's servers, laptops, anything that you can find. And it was 6 students and a professor that basically picked up Condor as a project and decided that this was the next, this was what they wanted to do. This is what they wanted to hack. This is what they wanted to develop. After about 2 years of development, it got to a really, really good stage, and they actually presented it to us. We have in Red Hat, one of the maybe little known facts is we're not headquartered in Silicon Valley. We are headquartered in a small campus called North Carolina State University out of Raleigh, North Carolina, which is the largest engineering campus actually in the US, one of the largest ones. But what it allows us to do is really stay inside the student community and not kind of stay somewhere where we hope innovation will happen. But what we do is we have this annual conference where we invite a lot of these universities to come in and talk about what interesting things they're doing. And we also invite the industry people. So it's our top 100 customers that are actually invited. So we actually expose them to our most demanding customers frankly, the most paying customers, as well as the most demanding projects that are out there. And bridging these two exposes a lot of these projects that will see the light of day, or frankly, we don't think about it, but the industry and the community really put strongly behind it. But what it allowed us to do is help us actually give that, those 6 students suddenly got an Access community of about 180,000 developers in a matter of 2 months. And what it enabled, frankly, I'll talk about, everybody talks about cloud computing, but this helped us get the 3 legs of what we call cloud computing. So it allowed us to actually take grid technology out to the masses, which could be commoditized, could be available, and had a self-sustaining community to develop. The second leg, actually, of what I would call the so-called cloud computing is AMQP. This is again a project that came out of a customer. I presented SE Linux to you, which was a different kind of customer. AMQP came out of JP Morgan Chase. As you know, they're one of the largest financial institutions in the world after all this crash and everything. But again, it came out of 6 engineers in their IT department that had spent enough money on MQ and TIPCO and couldn't get it to work fast enough. For example, what they were trying to trade is when Bush, was trying to get reelected. If you remember, I think there was one state of Florida and one county that had to recount and try to really elect who it was. And based on whether he gets elected or not, these financial institutions make trades of $2 to $3 trillion a day in terms of whether to buy the dollar or sell the dollar. And these are all automatic trades that have to get done across all these financial institutions. And for them, both these products were just not fast enough. But what it allowed these programmers to do is they took AMQP in and they silently ran it on their production systems. And they were able to compute and able to make far more money in a day than they had made in 6 months. And when JP, of course, was a customer of ours, and then similar story happened with that government agency where they came to Red Hat and said, we are not in the business of software. We want to try to see if you take this project up that you will do 2 things to it. You will give it a community, because we also want the other financial institutions to use it, because we don't see every usage. I mean, that's one advantage of the community, is what JP Morgan Chase sees, Deutsche Bank will not see, or what Deutsche Bank sees, JP Morgan will not see. And so it allows them to get this community of use, and that's how the product actually gets better, which is the whole principle around why, when we acquire, we don't want to own the bits. There is really no value in the bits alone, because what we can do with it, we really have no idea what we hold in our hands. And so with an example like this, again, it allowed this technology to get commoditized, to be available to the masses. And again, once it gets even more commoditized, it's available across a horizontal use. A bank can use it, a financial institution. I was hearing about Aramco's case, the oil and gas. There could be animation studios. There could be a lot of uses for similar technology. And then I think I'll talk about the last probably piece of the third leg, as I call it, is we did a little acquisition last year and a half ago, where again in the space of virtualization we saw, we were not really sitting out and twiddling our thumbs. We were just trying to figure out how quickly or when would be the right opportunity to commoditize. As you know, there's probably only been one player in this market for a few years, and what we really wanted to do is not make it another special piece of software. The way Red Hat looks at software is, again, like I said, if it can be commoditized, if it can be given a mass usage, that's something we want to go after. So what it allowed us to do is as simple as I have this laptop here, I have a USB key, and I want to virtualize the laptop. I insert the USB key. It's a utility. It comes up. You check the box, and you're virtualized. It's that simple. What it allows you to do is any hardware or any software application that you're running, you should not have to recreate the wheel. You should not have to send your people to the next 6 months in terms of trying to learn a new technology, get trained, get integrated. And just like the gentleman from Cygnus was talking about, take 6 months to integrate it in. It should work in minutes. It should work in days. It should work in weeks. So this technology, again, this acquisition allowed us to give, essentially bring the KVM or virtualization technology out to the masses. And I'm not going to bore you with the product side, but it's something that you will see Red Hat actively talk about. Since we are talking about the universities and the academia, I have just a couple of slides to talk about what else is going on in the universities across the world. But by no means is this the only one. I've only tried to capture a few of them. But there are fairly interesting projects that are happening in across the world. I mentioned a few from like University of Wisconsin, where actually even things don't just lead to lab